it's scrolling.
The stream is live.
All right. And then do you have the option in the top corner to go live as well?
Yeah, I'm live. I'm live.
All right. Good morning, guys. It's Jennifer, and I'm joined with Crime and Cask over on YouTube. If you see that down there, go follow, go subscribe. I know I said I wasn't doing true crime anymore, but we're doing it. We're doing it because we're talking about the Stephen Smith case, and this needs justice. So we've got the expert here in Murdaugh. If you do not follow him, he is huge over on TikTok, by the way, guys. I was like, whoa, boots on the ground. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I had a friend of mine give me a sticker. It says, I'm TikTok famous. Sorry, I missed that last part. What did you say?
I said you are. I can't figure out how to go big on TikTok, but YouTube, I've got it a little bit figured out, which is good.
I know, and you told me when we had talked before about Murdaugh, about my YouTube channel. You're like, why aren't you bigger on YouTube? I'm like, I don't know.
I was shocked.
Well, the way I did YouTube before was I would do a TikTok video and I would just take that TikTok video and upload it to YouTube, and I really did nothing to it. And so maybe YouTube just didn't like that. I know they flagged me one time and they were like, you're posting too much unoriginal content.
Yeah, they like you to kind of do a different dynamic. I feel like over on YouTube, we have a little more freedom to talk about, murder and things like that versus TikTok.
We don't have to say unalive. We don't have to say unalive.
Right. We don't have to use that word. That's, made up now. That's going to be added to Urban Dictionary probably soon.
It was funny. I was talking to another creator in South Carolina, and we were just talking on the telephone, and she was talking about pew-pews and unaliving, and I was like, we're talking on the phone. You can say the words.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, that's the way I talk now. I'm like, I know.
It becomes a part of your vocabulary, which is a shame. We should have the freedom of speech to say the things that are real. This is real life stuff.
It is what it is. We're not talking about doing it. We're talking about people who have done it.
Right. So, I would say a lot of my subscribers already know about the Murdaugh case, but unless they watched the documentaries, they may not know who Stephen Smith is. So can you give us a little breakdown about Stephen Smith? And guys, remember, this is a small community. You have been boots on the ground there, talking to people, doing interviews for some time now. So if you guys want to catch up on everything he's been investigating, TikTok's really the place. And I'll drop your link there. But tell us a little bit about Stephen Smith.
Sure. So I've got a new book coming out, and I don't go back into Stephen's whole life because he died at the age of 19 in Hampton County, South Carolina, in a little town called Brunson, South Carolina. And there's a picture of Stephen right there. There's a very worked up picture of me.
Actually, I was going to text you and be like, you're looking really good.
Oh, yeah. Got the beard and everything. And so Stephen, unfortunately, in July 8th of 2015, was found dead on a road called Sandy Run Road, which is where the title of the book comes from, Heartbreak on Sandy Run Road. And that's the actual road. Right there between he and I is where he was found dead, laying in the middle of the road. And he was walking to his dad's house. It was probably 3:00 in the morning. And if anybody lives out in the country, you can barely see your hand in front of your face because there's just no lights out there. And it's just been a question for years, for a decade, of what happened to Stephen Smith? Why was he out in the middle of the road? What happened to his car? Why were his shoes on? Why does he only have that hit on his front forehead and in the back of his head? And this really bugged me a lot. And And it's not something that happens overnight that you just all of a sudden discover everything and solve it. This has been going on. I've been investigating this case now for 2 years, and I've had, as you said, multiple interviews with very very close to the situation. And I've solved this case. I have solved this case. Now, when I say I've solved this case, people are like, well, why aren't you on NBC's Dateline? And I tell people this, and you have to understand the news and the media a little bit. News is very reluctant to say anything about anybody being dead or people who would be involved in a death, unless the police or some public entity move forward with it. So,
and I can attest to that. I'm a former journalist. If you guys are new here, and exactly what you're saying, unless you have some type of badge, Jim, I can't put you on air. And I think that's the beauty of the internet too, right, is I don't have to prove to you my credentials and my sources. It's either you believe me or you don't. And when you look at the facts and the way you've lined them up, it's making sense. So,
yeah.
Continue on like you're saying, even if you reached out to these major media outlets, unless it's coming from the sheriff's department, they're not running with it, unfortunately. I mean,
they're not.
I get it to an extent, but then this is where you get your investigative journalism team to go look into it and work with you, which have the local media reached out to you to kind of follow along with you at all?
No, they haven't, but I'm also to blame on that. I haven't reached out to local.
Well, they should be reaching out to you, though. I mean, this is where
they should, but journalism, I have found is highly competitive.
Yes.
Everybody's trying to one up everybody else. Everybody's trying to be the first to report, exclusive, and they want to say that.
Which is funny, because I always would say when we were in the newsroom, they don't give a shit who had it first. They are not like sitting at the dining room table being like, did you see that Channel 2 had this first?
Right.
No,
yeah. Let me click over to Channel 2.
And the competitiveness is just between us as stations being like, oh, I was there first, or I talked to so-and-so first. The general public doesn't give a shit who had it first.
Yeah.
So
he was a 19-year-old. He was a 19-year-old nursing student from Hampton County, which is in the Low Country of South Carolina. Anybody that knows it, and what they call the Low Country is basically the coastal area from Myrtle Beach, Charleston, down to Georgia. So Hampton County is just about an hour north, I say, of Charleston, or Walterboro, South Carolina. Right. I mean, where he died was probably about a 15-minute drive to Moselle, which was the home of Alec Murdaugh and his family. But the circumstances surrounding his death have always just been suspicious. What?
Did he have earbuds in that night he was walking? I can't remember if it's this case or a different one.
No, I don't think he did.
He was listening. Was he listening to music? Okay.
No, his phone was in his car for some weird reason. That I don't know why his phone was in his car. Maybe he just forgot it and was half a mile down the road and was like, I'll forget it. But in his death,
I want to also throw this out. Like, a lot of people, who don't know much about this case, what you may have seen, because if you're only looking at a couple headlines that pop up in your news feed, is that there was this rumor that Buster Murdaugh and Stephen Smith had some type of relationship, which has been disproven, but people have speculated that because Buster was scared of that coming out, that he may have been involved in Stephen Smith's murder. And then also, we haven't even talked about, for someone new here, how Stephen was murdered. So you can kind of go into that too.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy Smith, his mother had pleaded, for the truth for years. And she's like, somebody did this.
Sure.
And she said, whoever it was needs to come forward so our family can finally have peace. And she has an attorney over at a company called Bland Richter, Eric Bland. And he also came out, he says, we urge anyone with knowledge of the events leading up to Stephen's death to contact SLED and bring long-awaited answers. So I took that battle cry and I ran with it. And I spent a lot of time on this case, really breaking it down piece by piece. So let's start with the car. Okay. So Stephen drove a car that is notorious. It's a Chevy Aveo, and the year, make, and model of that Chevy Aveo has a issue with that car where it will break down and it will stop. It'll just stop everything. Like you're driving down the road, and it'll feel like you're out of gas. And I'm trying to recall the name of this little sensor, but it's a sensor that they may have even had a recall on this car, but it would mimic you being out of gas because it messed with the timing of the car. And when it did that, it sent these signals and it just shut the car down. And sometimes it wouldn't start, and it would just feel weird, like you ran out of gas. That nobody looked into that. They're all like, well, he had gasoline in his car, but why was his gas cap out? Well, I don't know. Like I said, it's pitch black out. If it's 3:00 in the morning, he's taking his gas cap
Like,
out.
was
why?
it tampered with?
I don't know. Was he looking at it?
Yeah.
Was he smelling it? Who knows what he was doing? And then he just decided to walk. Maybe he was pissed off. Maybe he was tired. It's 3:00 in the morning, even though you're 19. I don't know what's going on. He wanted to get home. And his dad lived about 3 miles away. So he decided to walk. I guess it makes sense. He didn't want to call anybody and wake him up or whatever. I don't know what was going through his head. He's not here to tell us, but that's the reason, the only reason that I can find that why his car would have died like that, because the way that his car was reacting, not only that night, but weeks leading up to that. And then you throw into that car was notorious for this particular sensor. That's why his car ran out of gas. So, or didn't run out of gas, felt like it ran out of gas. So everybody was scratching their head on that. So now he's walking down the road, and when they find him, he's laying in the middle of the road, literally across the middle of the road. There's a solid yellow line and striped on the other side. And he was walking. If he was walking, he'd be walking on the right side of the road, so cars would be coming up behind you to your left. But what he did was out in the middle of the road. So everybody's going to be like, there's a picture of his mom. Everybody's going to be like, why would anybody step out into the middle of the road? There's no move my camera. Why would anybody step out into the middle of the road? If a car's coming down the road, why step out? Makes sense, right?
Right. I mean, and we're also talking about a small town here. It's not like crazy traffic, right?
No, this is a country road.
Right.
Not many people travel it. It's a very narrow road. There's his car. You can see the gas cap was off. It's a very narrow road. And when I was out there and I measured the road, and it's exactly 10 feet wide. And that's not very big. So to get to the center of the road, it literally took me 2.5 steps. 2.5 steps. He was 5'7". He was left-handed. Maybe it took him 3 steps. And the 3 steps in the middle of the road. So it's not very big. So why was he in the middle of the road? And then the police had always said, there's no way that this was a hit and run. And the reason they said that was because they're cops,
Right.
and they think a certain way, and when they see hit and runs on a car, there's a lot of damage to the body. Number one, a lot of broken bones. You literally come out of your shoes because you're hit at such an impact. Let's say you're going 45, 50 miles an hour. You're hit with such an impact, you literally will come out of your shoes. You're hit so hard. And that's pretty much a fact of auto accidents. So if you're a state police officer and you're investigating this, you're like, there's no way he was hit by a car. Well, we're going to get into that. So just hold that shoes still on in the back of your mind. Let's put a pin in that.
Right.
And the other thing is that he had a gash across his left head, forehead, which kind of goes into a crescent moon, kind of. And then he had an impact in the back of his head. And then what he did was he bled out. And the way the streets and the roads and down here in the South are made is we have a very big crest that starts in the middle and rolls down. And the way they design those here in the South is because we get a lot of rain and hurricanes and these type of things where a lot of rain can build up. So we don't have them very flat. So his blood actually was running downward towards the other side of the road. You can actually see that in one of the photos, and I think I actually have it on that story. It might be the lead photo.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see the blood actually goes from
back to your page. Yeah.
You can see the center of the road.
Okay, let me.
It's the first picture of the article. Anyway, so
wow,
yeah.
Hide this one. Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's why in the South. Okay. So you can see. So he was there for a while because he bled out, and he landed on his back, and so the back of his head, his body's kind of a little discombobulated, but that's where he landed, and the blood ran down to the other side of the road. Now, to the other side of the road is a cornfield. Okay, and in July, where I come from in the Midwest, we used to call it knee high by the 4th of July. Well, and down here in the South, by the time July 8th comes around, corn is big, and it's huge, and we're actually harvesting a lot of corn, edible corn, anyways. And one of the things that, well, let me back up. So I'm going to do a Quentin Tarantino on you. We're on July 15th, but we're going to jump ahead a little bit to the summer of 2024, because in the MATE report, which is a report that the South Carolina Highway Patrol does, there was 2 individuals named. Buster Murdaugh was one of them. There was a lot of rumors about Buster, and you said what those were. By the way, those are all bogus. I've checked all that out. He wasn't even in town, but there was 2 other names that came up. And one of them is Sean Conley, and the other one is Patrick Wilson. Now, who is Sean Conley and Patrick Wilson? Okay, so those 2 guys lived about 2.5, 3 miles from each other, and to get to each other's house, you had to go down Sandy Run Road. Patrick Wilson lives on Prince Williams Road at the time, and Sean Conley just lived off of Sandy Run Road. And those 2 were thick as thieves. I mean, best buddies. And I interviewed Patrick Wilson. How I got this interview, I have no idea. I just asked him, honestly. And he said yes, to my surprise. So I met him in Greenville, South Carolina, where he was living at the time. I had seen that he had found God, got a girlfriend. He moved out of Hampton County, got himself a job because he had been into a lot of trouble. He had an attempted murder charge back in 2015. They didn't prosecute, weirdly enough. But his attorney at the time was Corey Fleming, who was Alex Murdaugh's college roommate. And Alex Murdaugh worked at the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office at the time. this is all connected. I'm telling you, it's all related, dated, or
That's
hated.
what it's like. The small town stuff, man, is
Yeah. And so I'm going to try to go slow because I'm
unreal.
trying to make sure everybody gets all these connections when we get to kind of the end here. And so I'm
A
interviewing
full
Patrick,
picture.
and I asked him, I said, that's not the one. But anyways, I asked Patrick, I said, tell me what you do down in Hampton. And he said, oh, we do a lot of hog hunting. I'm like, hog hunting? Really? Now, wild boar, wild hogs is what he was referring to. And hogs do a lot of damage to farms, crops. They love corn, absolutely love corn. And I said, well, how would you go about doing this? And he and Sean would get into each other's truck. One would drive and one would shoot. And they would just go down these country roads looking for hogs along the side of the road to shoot at while they were driving. Highly illegal, by the way. You can't shoot
Right.
moving vehicle, and there's houses around, even though you're out in the country. But these guys didn't have,
because the bullet's going somewhere, right?
Bullets going somewhere, and that they didn't have a real high regard for law enforcement back then. Between the two of them, I think they got pulled over, arrested 27 times in 2 years. So I said, hog hunting. I said, all right. So how many hogs have you killed? Now this time he's 26 years old, right? And I said, how many hogs have you killed? He said, oh, I don't even know. I said, don't guess. I don't know. 15, 20. He'd start laughing. He's like, no. He's like more like 200. I said, 200?
Wow.
I said, well, how do you do it? And he told me, he said, well, you drive along the road and you get up along a cornfield or bean field or whatever kind of field it is that has a crop in it, an edible crop. And they go rooting around, and they kind of root down, and they go around to the edge, and then go back down the row. And so one will sit outside the window, like his butt will be on the windowsill, and the gun will be over the top of the roof of the truck. So they're not shooting. If they're going to shoot to the left, towards the driver, they're not going to shoot in the vehicle towards the driver. They're going to get out of the truck and sit their little butt on top so that they're riding down the roof. And of course, if they're shooting at the passenger side, then that's easy, because then they just roll the window down and they shoot out the passenger side. So that's how they do it. I said, okay, now what's next? And he's like, well, you got to drive slow. And I said, what do you mean slow? And he's like, I mean, it's slow, like maybe 10 miles an hour, something like that. I'm like, why do you do that? And he was like, well, because if you go too fast, you're going to spook the hogs. And this road you're looking at right here, by the way, this is Sandy Run Road. That road is made out of almost like real concrete. You can see the stone in it. And so I can hear cars coming down that road before you see them. Truly.
Right.
You can barely make out what's coming, but you can hear it coming. It's this roar of the tires on this particular concrete. I mean, I know all concrete's hard, but this stuff is like ridiculous. And so if you're going to drive your lifted truck,
you're out in the middle of nowhere. Right.
Nowhere. Although in that picture you can see there's a mailbox. There's actually a house right there. Weirdly enough. And so I said, okay, so you're going to slow down because you don't want the hogs to hear you. Yeah, he's like, you don't want to spook the hogs. And you're going about 10 miles an hour? Yep. I said, do you go down the road? And he's like, no, you get out of the road because the road's too loud down here. He says, so we just, shoot over into the grass. I'm like, okay. Yeah, man, I guess that makes sense. And how do you see him? He goes, well, I usually turn the headlights off. He goes, we'll have like a bar headlight on the top of the truck, or sometimes we use different flashlights, like a green colored flashlight or a red colored flashlight, because the white light spooks the hogs too. So all they're trying to do is not spook the hog, almost trying to sneak up on it so they can shoot it. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yes, okay. Absolutely.
So I've looked at the car. Why was this car stopped? I've looked at why he's walking down the road. I looked at why he's walking down the middle of the road. I couldn't quite figure out why he's in the middle of the road. And then, excuse me, I did a story one day. Sorry. I did a story one day on Patrick Wilson and Sean Conley, and just of their relationship to the mate report and Stephen Smith and where they live. And I went out there and drove all these different scenarios. And I had named Patrick Wilson's mother as this one particular person with a different last name. And so I got a phone call after I reported this article, and this person was upset. And, he's not he's not an Altman, is what they had said. His name was Wilson, or she's not an Altman, Patrick's mother. And so I said, well, let me talk to you about Patrick. And they were like, yeah. And I said, well, what's this whole Stephen Smith thing? I mean, this just kind of confuses me. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I said, well, his involvement, number one. And they stopped, and it was about a 5-second delay. And I didn't talk. And they were like, well, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I was there the night Stephen Smith died. And that just stopped me. It just stopped me. I said, what do you mean? So like, all right. They said, well, I got off work, and I'm not using their name. It's a confidential source. They didn't want their name used. I'm sure somebody's going to probably figure it out, but I'm not going to be the one to give it to them.
Sure.
And they said they got off work, and they went to where Patrick Wilson lived. They knew the person that was caring for him, and they went to go visit them. And they said when they walked in, they said, where's Pat? And they called him Pat. And the response back to me was, well, he and that Conley boy went out for the night. Okay, so this would have been Monday night. So Stephen was found on Tuesday, July 8th. So this was Monday night, 11 o'clock, 11:30, July 7th. And they said they proceeded to stay there for a couple hours. Because when they get off at 11, it's like it's their 5 o'clock, right? So they're there. So they're up, and they said about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. They don't remember exactly the time. Sean and Patrick come back. According to them, Sean and Patrick come back to Patrick's house and come in. And Patrick comes in, and he is clearly upset. And they're like,
"Is this the one you said that was like vomiting?"
Well, he starts to, right? So, but before he does that, he goes to the people that were there, and one of them is now passed, but this person was there and heard it and saw him, and he said, Patrick said, quote, "I think we hit somebody. I think we killed somebody." And then he proceeded to throw up all over the place.
Ugh.
And the person who has passed, that person just kind of, I guess, I said, well, didn't that make anybody like look at each other like, what?
Tell me what happened.
Right. And that person just kind of sloughed it off as they were just out drinking, and, maybe they hit a deer or a hog or something. And, just kind of really didn't follow up on it, which was a head scratcher for me. But, and this person was upset because they cleaned up the throw up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they weren't happy about that. And they proceeded to go on and tell me the history that they knew about Patrick. And it was an 1.5-hour phone call. But I went through at least 4 times in this interview because I wanted to make sure. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me.
I hear that right. Yes.
On July 8th, 2015, you personally saw Patrick Austin Wilson, Sean Levi Conley, and he came in and professed to you and said, I think we hit somebody. Yeah. And it was like on the 4th time, they stopped and were like, How many times do I have to tell you this?
To tell
Yes,
you this.
this is what happened. I was like, okay, listen, I'm
Because
just
you're like,
making sure.
I don't want to put this out there. And then you come back at me and say, I didn't say that. So I get it. You're covering your bases, man.
Right. And not only that, this is a recorded phone call, which in South Carolina, you need one party consent. But I was the one party. And but this phone call was recorded. So now I get off the phone and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. What do I do
Now
with
it all
this?
starts to click to me.
Let me ask you before you continue. My mind immediately went to, is it possible that they were hog hunting and shot Stephen by accident?
Okay. So here is how I figured out what happened, because I got off the phone and I was like, oh my God. So I had all these thoughts going into my head. And then I listened to the Patrick Wilson interview again. And then I listened to this interview again. But while I interviewed that person, I said, let me ask you something. I said, Patrick told me when I interviewed him that he goes hog hunting a lot. And they were like, yeah. And so I gave him the scenario. And I said, what if they were hog hunting and Stephen saw them and they turned their headlights off on a highway and slowed down and pulled over on the opposite side of the road to go hog hunting and turn their headlights off and were driving about 10 miles an hour? And they were like, oh, well, I could believe that. So I ran this scenario with a private investigator that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
And I did exactly that. So drove up down that exact road on Sandy Run Road. They were on the other side of the road where Stephen would have been. I pulled over onto the other side of the road, onto the grass, got the car going to about 10 miles an hour. And then there's a stop right there. So what you're looking at this is an older picture. That field right there would have had 6-7 foot tall cornfield right there. You see that telephone?
I got a good one that I just found. I found a good one to show you.
You see that
guys,
telephone pole though? I want to make sure you see that telephone pole.
Yes.
Okay.
And y'all in the chat, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in comments, and we'll kind of address them as we go along here.
Well, you're looking for that. I'm going to tell you about this telephone pole. So you see where that tree line is down there? Right before that field? So if you go down maybe about a quarter mile to the right is where Patrick Wilson lives. There's that goes to a T. And then you would have to take a left there and come down this road, down Sandy Run Road. So you got Stephen walking on the left side of the road as we're looking at it. And then he's hit in the middle of the road, laying over here. But what they did, what I figured out they did, is go back to the other picture. Yeah. Can you, there's a corn, but can you go back to okay. What they did is they came down here and they go into the grass and start pulling over what looks like they're pulling over on the side of the road to do what? They're not going 55 miles an hour down this highway like everybody else does. They look like they're pulling over and they're in the grass to slow down so they don't spook the hogs, and they turn their headlights off. I'm sorry, but if I'm a 19-year-old kid, I'm thinking, oh, they're coming to pick me up. So
I mean, anyone's thinking that. Anyone, especially let's be honest, Stephen was openly gay, and you're in the South, in the Bible Belt. It's not the most accepted thing. Versus, here I live outside of Atlanta, very common, in the gay community. But we're talking about an openly gay teenager in the South. He probably always had his his shackles up. If you that's a good way to say it, is he's probably always a little paranoid.
Makes sense. But once you get to this, where this telephone pole is, right? That's where Stephen was hit. Do you see that? Yeah, the yellow line right there? the dash.
Yes.
That's where he's laying over. So when I did this experiment, that person was standing right over here where Stephen would have been standing. I pull over on the side of the road, and then I get to this telephone pole, and I pull back out into the road to avoid the telephone pole. And as I'm doing that, that person's already walking out into the middle of the road, and I drive right by him. And when we got done with the experiment, I said, "What were you thinking? What did it feel like?" And they were like, "Literally, I thought you were pulling over. It looked like you were pulling over to pick me up."
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, and so I'm doing the same thing. I'm walking out in the middle of the road. And I'm like, "Hey, I'm right here," because the car would have still been going, right? So you think about where that truck is going, and then all of a sudden it pulls back out on the road. Well, Steven's in the middle of the road with his left hand up in the air,
like, hey, yeah, and he's somehow.
And the truck that Sean Conley drove was a lifted Z71 Chevy pickup truck. And in my article that I gave you the link to, there's a picture of it, probably about halfway through the article. You can see that truck, and you can see that he has what's called tow mirrors, TOW, tow mirrors on either side. And tow mirrors are bigger mirrors that stick further out than normal original equipment mirrors, so you can see your trailer and what you're pulling on your trailer. That particular side view mirror, that passenger side, when I talked to Patrick Wilson, had been damaged on this Chevy pickup truck. That had been damaged. Yep. Keep going down. No, don't click on that. It's in there. You got to go about halfway down. It's the one that I sent you.
Oh, where do we go? Go back.
It's in the private chat.
This is the article, or no? Am I in the right one?
I don't think so. Well, hold on.
Okay.
I've written so many of them.
No, this is different. Here,
it's a different one. If you go to the one that I sent you, it's got all the stuff. You can see the picture of the telephone pole. You can see the picture of the corn. That's it. Roll about halfway down, and you're going to see Sean's truck. And so Sean, his truck had been damaged, and that side view mirror. Wait to get there. You go. Literally is about halfway down. That's Patrick's old house. Next one. You see how he's laying there, though?
Yeah.
Next one. Keep going.
This is the truck?
That's the truck. You see those side view mirrors? That passenger side view mirror.
Yes.
That was the truck that Patrick told me he and Sean were driving in that night. That's the truck that the person that I interviewed said that dropped Patrick off. That's the truck right there. That is the truck. And that side view mirror was damaged. Now, when I interviewed Patrick Wilson, he told me it got damaged because when they were hog hunting one time, he was shooting out the passenger side window, and he just happened to shoot at the mirror and kind of didn't break the mirror, but tore some of the plastic. I don't know how you do that with a 9mm high-powered rifle without just blowing the whole thing off. In fact, that's probably an experiment I should try to do. He just said some of the plastic broke. Anyway, so that was their explanation. And then those mirrors were changed out back to original equipment mirrors later on. It was months later. But that you see that behind that side view mirror, there's a little piece of plastic that protrudes out into like a point. and that crescent moon I was telling you on his head. So remember, he's left-handed, so he's going to be here's the left side of his head. So if a truck is pulled over on the opposite side of the road, he's walking this way towards the truck, and he's left-handed going this way, and this is where you get hit, is on the left hand, not this side, on your right side, because you're not walking towards it in the middle. You're walking this way because it's on side of the road. You're walking toward it, and then it pulls out real quick, and he gets clipped on the side and the left side of his head, and he falls backwards onto the road, and that's where he laid.
Yeah, that's where I was a little shocked to see he was not face down, and that makes sense.
He was hit
this way,
and he moved back.
Yeah,
and then
another thing you bring up, I remember, I wish I had the 911 call on me. I don't have it, on my desktop, but the person who called in is the one who immediately said, there's a body in the road. It looks like someone got hit by a car. So they're taking that information right off the bat based on what a caller says, and their mindset, it is already like, okay, this person was hit by, you know what I mean? Like how a person can kind of set what happened in motion, but yet if you're not investigating it deeper, you're just kind of taking that phone call for what it is, which is crazy. So, and you're telling me none of this truck, none of this was really looked at by investigators?
Well, here's where it gets weird. Okay, so as I said the name Altman before.
Yeah.
There was a guy by the name of Nick Ginn. He was a Hampton City Police Department. He worked for he was a police officer for the Hampton City Police Department. So there's Hampton City cops, then there's Hampton County sheriffs, and then there was state police. This highway is a state highway. So the state patrol is what took the lead on it. And who was secondary was the Hampton County Sheriff's Department, because it was in the county. It was not in the city. So, but here's where it gets weird. There was a guy, it's going to take a little bit to explain. There's a guy, his name was Daryl Williams. And Daryl Williams, in December of 2015, called Nick Ginn. And he told Nick Ginn that Patrick had told him that on the night of July 8th, he said the next day, Sean Conley had called him and said, I think I hit something. And then he went back the next day, and all the cops were there. And of course, they found out it was Stephen Smith. And then after Patrick had told him this, he walked outside and started to throw up. Remember the last time he said that?
Yes.
My confidential source said the same thing. When he said this, he started to throw up. Okay, so who's Daryl Williams? Daryl Williams was dating at the time Patrick's mother. She is not an Altman, but he was dating Patrick's mother. He had 2 children with her. And why he called Nick Ginn was because he used to date Nick Ginn's mother. So they were never married, so they weren't like stepbrothers or anything. But Nick Ginn and Patrick Wilson basically shared Daryl Williams as a guy who dated their mother and lived with their mothers. So I listened to this, and it was recorded by the state police. And the guy said, "Well, what did you do? What did you do?" And he said, "Well, I called Patrick and Sean up, and I told them I needed to meet with them." And Nick Ginn took pictures of Sean Conley's side view mirror. And Patrick Wilson told me the same thing. He says he called me up. He wanted me to meet him. Sean and I to meet him with the truck over at the Hampton Inn. I pulled in. There's a bunch of cops there. He comes out. He takes pictures with a cell phone. I said, "Where are the pictures?" He says, "I don't know. There's Corey Fleming." And then Nick Ginn says, "I sent him to the state police, to a guy by the name of Mitch Altman." Another guy related to Patrick Wilson. Remember? Yeah. Related, dated, or hated. And
yes.
So
Seriously.
yeah. So I did a FOIA request to the state police for those exact pictures. In fact, Nick Ginn even said the date and the time that he texted them to Mitch Altman. They don't exist. I got a whole dossier of pictures from the state police and this FOIA. Those weren't in it. So then I called Hampton City Police and I said, hey, this is what I was told. This is what was said. Do you have these pictures? And they were like, their response was, we're not involved in that whatsoever. We're the city police. Nick Ginn should never have been investigating this. We don't know why he would have been taking pictures, and we don't have any of these pictures you're talking about. I'm like, this is starting to sound really weird. Why is Nick Ginn getting involved? Yeah. And then, of course, I reached out to Nick Ginn, and he hasn't responded to me.
Of course.
So we've got damage to the side view mirror. Patrick says he shot at it. This person says, Patrick told me they hit somebody and it hit him with the side view mirror. And in fact, Dr. Erin Presnell, who is the, she did the autopsy, said he was hit by a vehicle, probably a side view mirror. And nobody believed her.
So there was no, I'm not familiar with the autopsy. There was no bullets or anything like that to where it could have been what I thought. Okay, so no evidence of that.
Really. He had a gash to the head and he had a gash to the back of the head.
Okay.
But again, when the cops hear this isn't, no, he's got his shoes on. Why is he in the middle of the road? There's no bones broken. This doesn't make any sense. He's getting hit on a highway.
Right.
These guys were going 10 miles an hour.
Right.
They just clipped him. He was 5'7", maybe 130 pounds, not a big kid. And when you have that impact, even at 10 miles an hour, you're not going to come out of your shoes and you're going to hit the back of that road so hard, it's going to open up and you can see how much blood left his body. Mm-hmm. Now they could have, I guess, according to the source, they could have stopped and picked him up. But here's the problem. As I said before, Patrick Wilson, 82 days prior to July 8th, he was arrested for attempted murder. And the guy that served him, the warrant, wrote down Patrick at the time was 5'4", whatever, but he had shot at somebody. So he and Sean were out together. Somebody owed him money, and the guy wasn't going to pay him until whatever Friday. And Patrick was mad. He wanted money. Yeah. And he went into Sean's truck, got a pistol out and shot at the guy. That was 82 days prior. It was, I think it was Craig Smith, Officer Craig Smith. But here's the funny part. And this is where Patrick lied to me. In our interview, he says that he and Sean, according to him, he and Sean were at his dad's house, which was next to his great grandmother's house. Basically, two trailers that were on this big property, but they were at his dad's house, and they were drinking and doing drugs with Sean and Patrick. And I said, "Who was there?" He's like, "My dad." So I had asked him, "Why don't you live with your dad?" And he's like, "I don't know." And then he told me he was doing drugs and drinking with his dad at 17 or 18, whatever he was. I was like, okay, well, that makes sense why you're not living with your dad. Your great grandmother didn't want you doing drugs with your dad all the time because your dad did drugs. Okay. So now he says we're doing drugs, right. We're drinking, and we ran out of drugs. We were up all night. We ran out of drugs in the morning, and we drove to go get more drugs. And when we did, we ran into a now Stephen Smith had died, right? And so they set up traffic. He says he ran into a license check. I thought that's weird. A license check. A checkpoint. In the morning, though,
we used to call them like DUI checkpoints down in Florida. They would set them up, like.
Yeah, but they do those at night, not in the morning. So, anyways, he says about 8 o'clock in the morning, they go out to go buy more drugs, and they run into this license check. And who was the person that did it? Craig Smith. Okay, so I'm like thinking to myself, Patrick, you're telling me this sheriff who just arrested you 82 days prior for attempted murder is going to let you two drive through, and you said you were drinking beer all night long and you were high on coke and and marijuana. And so you're blown out of your mind, and you're going to get more drugs because you ran out, probably more coke. And this cop is going to let you go through? And he goes, yeah. He goes, in fact, he jumped on the back of the truck, and there was a cooler back there, and there was a bottle of moonshine. And he says he took the bottle of moonshine. I'm like, hold on. I'm like, you're not of age. You've been drinking all night long. You're probably drunk and high. And not only that, then he finds a bottle of moonshine and he just lets you guys go through. Yeah.
Believable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I said, what happened on your way back? He goes, well, we took a different way back. I'm like, okay. That makes no sense. So his story has a lot of holes in it. And yeah, this is me doing some photoshopping, putting him out in that road. That was actually a picture I took of him, and that's the trailer that he lived in. That was his attorney that got him out of the attempted murder charge.
So a couple weeks before Stephen Smith's incident, he already was kind of on the radar of law enforcement, and see, this is what I'm thinking is
there's the corner. So this is Sandy. This is Sandy Run Road that you have to. This is a T right here. Sorry to interrupt, but this is Prince William's Road coming from Patrick Wilson's house. You come to this T and you take a left, and it's not even a quarter mile, and you see the cornfield. And Stephen was about halfway down that cornfield. So,
I mean, even if they were going 10 miles an hour, if they were high and messed up, and even if it was an accident, I'm sure there was panic of shit, what do we do? You know what I mean? Even if it wasn't an intentional, we don't like Stephen Smith, he's gay, we're gonna, mess with him. I just feel no matter what the situation was, there was going to be panic of oh shit, what do we do?
Right. And he's like, damn, dude, I got an attempted murder charge on me. I mean, they had not adjudicated an attempted murder charge yet. He's like, so you got to think like a 19-year-old kid or 17, 18-year-old kid at the time. What are you going to do? We got to get out of here. And so the police SLED, which we call in South Carolina, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, after the Murdaugh murders, about a week or so after the Murdaugh murders, they came forward and said they're reopening the investigation of the death of Stephen Smith. And it was sometime after that they reclassified it as a homicide. I don't believe, based off of the evidence that I've seen and people that I've interviewed, that it was a homicide. I believe it was a hit and run. I believe it was an accident. I believe these guys were out drinking and getting high, according to what sources have told me. But they did quite a bit, and in
that's
their
exactly
opinion,
what it sounds like. Kids being kids, and let's be honest. If it were a target of hey, we don't like Stephen because he's gay, they probably would have done a lot more damage.
And the FBI would probably
there would have been
too.
A hate crime where there would have been way more to the autopsy. It sounds more like two kids messed up and hit him, and in a panic we're shit, what do we do?
Right. They leave.
Kind of shocked they did leave him like that, but also they're not in the mindset, right? They're high or whatever.
Well, they're going to be. Let's just say if they were drunk and high, like Patrick had told me, and like the source had told me. Now you got underage, you're drunk, you got drugs in the car, you're illegally hog hunting, and you got an attempted murder charge on you. What do you do? Run.
Figure out a way to cover it up. Right?
You run. And so you can just kind of picture it. Maybe they just pulled around, went back, drops him off at Patrick's house. He goes home, wipes his car down, whatever it is. And if you don't talk, Patrick, and I don't talk, no one will know.
Yeah.
Because that's it. But somebody did talk. So then I said, well, listen, it's been 10 years. Why come forward now? And they said, well, it's pretty simple. Patrick had gone to jail in Greenville County, South Carolina, just over by the Georgia border, for I think it was a stolen goods thing that he didn't show up for court. Anyway, so they put him in jail for 30 days. He spent Christmas of 2024 in jail. They said he got out in January of 2025, and they talked to Patrick's dad. And according to that source, Patrick's dad talked to Patrick after he got out. And Patrick said he had done something so bad in his life that he can't even talk about it. To this person, to the confidential source, they're thinking Stephen Smith. And so they're like, that's when I knew if somebody ever talked to me about this, I just need to tell what I know. But in my mind, so the journalist kicks in, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, his dad and this person already know that he's been a person of interest in the death of Stephen Smith. So what else is there?
I want to throw the friends group up.
Do you follow me on this one? When Patrick says,
yeah,
there's something so bad, I've done something so bad in my life, I can't talk about it. Well, they already know about Stephen
there's only
Smith.
two things that come to mind to me is like a murder or a rape, right? Like,
yeah, I know.
So I'm thinking murder, and like, not that it was intentional, like I said, I think if this were more of like, a lot of people are thinking it's because Stephen Smith was gay, he was targeted. I think a lot more damage would have been done. I think they would have tried to hide the body and conceal what was done. More effort would have went into covering things up.
Yeah. So keep this friend group up here for a minute. We'll talk about this.
I like being able to kind of see here because it's such a small town, and I love your slogan.
The friend group.
What is it? Dated.
Oh yeah.
Hated. What is it?
Related, dated, or hated. One of those three. So we've got a lot of deaths here, starting with Stephen Smith. Then you go to Gloria Satterfield, who was the Murdaugh housekeeper. Then you've got Mallory Beach. You got Paul Murdaugh and Maddie Murdaugh. Let me explain these two, because these all are connected, people. Do not think for a second these are not connected, okay? So if we believe what the confidential source told us, and we believe Daryl Williams and what Patrick told him, is that it was he and Sean. So if we go with that scenario, we've got, and Patrick told me that he's at Bennett, and him and Sean, they were at Moselle all the time, hunting, fishing, drinking, doing drugs, just having a good old time. Anthony Cook, here's who lives 5 minutes from each other. Sean Conley, Anthony Cook, and Mallory Beach, and Patrick Wilson all grew up in that Brunson area, about 5 minutes from one another.
Yeah.
Anthony Cook knew Mallory Beach when they were like toddlers. Before he could even have a memory of her, he was hanging out with her. And then you have Nathan Tootin, who's also a friend of theirs, and Nolan Tootin was also a friend of Paul's. This is a friend group that hung out, Moselle, hunting, fishing. Patrick knew all the ponds, the fish, catfish, and brim, and everything else. So well versed. Now you've got Miley, who is cousins. Miley Altman is cousins to Patrick. There's related. Then she's dating Connor Cook, who they're now married and has a baby. Dated. And then you've got Anthony Cook and Mallory Beach, dated. Nolan Tootin dated Mallory Beach. Sean Conley grew up with Mallory Beach. And then you've got persons of interest in the death of Stephen Smith. You got Sean and Patrick. So let's go back then to Gloria Satterfield. And, the whole story with that is, she fell off the stairs, and Murdaugh said it was the dogs. And
after a couple nights of drinking, kids talk and try to brag about things, don't they? Sometimes.
And Paul Murdaugh would go around and tell everybody. And Patrick Wilson told me this. He goes, Paul pushed Gloria down the steps, right? I was like, what? What? I'm like, what? How do you know that? He's like, because he told me. I said, what do you mean he told you? He's like, wow. I'm like, how many times? He's like, countless. I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah. He's like, yeah, he would just get drunk and tell everybody, yeah, I pushed Gloria. I'm like,
I thought he know this too. Like Paul, not that Paul didn't like Gloria. It seems like Paul had obviously this alternate personality when he drank, Timmy, and he was violent with his girlfriend. And why wouldn't he be violent with even his mother, probably? And of course, Gloria. Anyone who got in Paul's way of doing what Paul wanted to do, I'm sure, got the wrath of some type of physical.
If you look at the time frame of when Gloria died, Paul should have been at the University of South Carolina at that time, going to school. And so why he pushed her, I have no idea. I can only speculate that maybe, I know he was getting bad grades, that maybe he just came home and was upset, or who knows what was going on. And, Gloria asked one too many questions.
Said something like, Paul, you got to get your shit together. And that set him off, I care about you. I love you. You need to get your life together. And Paul could have been high and been like, shut up, Gloria. Yeah.
Yeah. But some people are like, oh my God, no, that never would have happened. I'm like, and that never, he loved Gloria. Well, he also loved Mallory. He also loved Morgan, and he, would physically assault her. Yeah. So.
Right. And I think a lot of this substance abuse, when your friend group gives you an alternate ego, that means you're being completely different than the person that you normally are, right? And we know there was this Timmy, and God knows when Timmy came out. It's very obvious Paul had some issues going on and would rely on substances to kind of get through that. Maybe even comparing himself to Buster, something as simple as God, I wish I could be more like my brother and have my life together and be smart. And I feel like Paul was just the cool kid in town. And that was something he really thrived off of in this whole group of friends. It's let's go to Paul's house. They have money, they have the boat, they have access to get the alcohol and whatever we want.
Yeah. No, but that all ended after the boat crash. They all separated themselves, even Morgan, his girlfriend. Yeah. They all stopped associating with Paul because, Paul offered them something. Like you said, it was Moselle, it was drugs, it was drinking, whatever it was, the hunting, the fishing. But after the boat crash, Mallory, that's how deep Mallory ran to everybody. She grew up with all these kids. They all knew her. They all loved her. I mean, they or dated her, just normal dating stuff. Related, dated, or hated. Related, dated, or hated.
I mean, they hung out, they talked, they gossiped. And I imagine so after that boat crash, Paul was even more dependent on substances because he felt abandoned by his friends. He was outcasted. People finally were, stepping up and saying, screaming at him murderer on the streets, which probably didn't happen to him before.
Yeah. So then here's where it gets a little more weird. Just days after the murders of Paul and Maggie, SLED interviewed Buster Murdaugh. And it was about an hour-long interview inside a police car, and there was two SLED agents that were interviewing Buster. And one of them says, and it was a person from the back seat says, "So what do you think about all this?" And he's like, "What do I think about what?" He's like, "Oh, your mother and your brother, getting killed. Do you think that somebody just came to kill Paul and your mother just happened to be there?" And he was like, "Actually, that's exactly what I think happened." And they're like, "Okay." And then the guy in the front seat goes, "Well, let me ask you something." He goes, and we're not investigating this as an agency yet or doing anything. He says, but the Smith boy,
we're just having a chat.
We're just having you know how cops are.
Yeah.
He says, the Smith boy. He's like, yeah. He's like, you hear anything about that? And here's where it gets very important. I want everybody to understand this. Have you heard anything related to the death of Stephen Smith as it relates back to the deaths of your brother and your mother? Okay. Does the death of Stephen Smith, does it mean anything to the deaths of your brother and your mother? Have you heard anything, any threats, any of this, any of that? And instead of Buster listening to what the guy said as it relates to your brother and your mother, he took it to be himself. Because as you had said, everybody and people like Manny Matney goes out there falsely accuses Buster of doing this or being a part of it somehow. The gay relationship, the baseball bat, all of it is just complete bunk. So he starts taking it, internalizing it as himself. But the question wasn't, have you had any threats? The question is, have you heard about any threats as it relates to your mother and your brother that go back to Stephen Smith? Now go back to the friend group picture. I want to show you something. And I've got more evidence and I can't come out with it right now, but I just want to tell you something. Go back to the friend group picture. Anthony Cook is the boyfriend of Mallory Beach. There's Anthony. And, in the night of the boat crash, he said, you know who that is? It's Paul Murdaugh. That's Alex Murdaugh's son. Good luck. And then he sees Paul smiling at him, and he's like, fuck you, Bo. You killed my girlfriend, Bo. I'll be rotten hell, and all these things. He's screaming at it. I'm not doing it justice, but he clearly he's upset, and he has a right to be. But he afterward he started wearing a bracelet, a purple bracelet, in honor of Mallory Beach, and he wore that at his wedding. He just got married, I think a year ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, and one of his best buddies is Sean Conley. They grew up 5 minutes from each other. They live right now 5 minutes from each other. Anthony Cook is a huge hog hunter. I think the only TikTok video that Anthony Cook has on his TikTok is he and Sean messing around out in the middle. And there's smiling Sean Conley standing next to Anthony Cook. Now, when you get into the boat crash, there has been people who have come out and said, well, what if Paul was going to use information that he knew who killed Stephen Smith to try to get out of that boat crash? Because you remember what Anthony Cook had said. He's good luck because he gets out of everything.
Good luck.
Connor Cook said that in his deposition with the DNR. That he's like, Paul gets out of everything. When I interviewed, and it worried him. It worried Connor so much he thought his life was in danger of the Murdaughs. When I talked to Patrick Wilson, he said the same thing, that Paul would get into car accidents, get into fights, and he would get out of it. And because he would get out of it, because he called granddaddy and he called daddy, and it would go away. So go back to the friend group, if you would, please. Blunt force trauma. It was.
We got a little delay here.
You had it.
Come on. There we go.
It isn't long. Isn't being live, right? That's all right. So
there we go.
Anthony thought he was going to get out of it. Connor thought he was going to get out of it. Patrick thought he was going to get out of it. Did Sean think he was going to get out of it? Because Sean was the one, according to the confidential source and according to Darrell Wilson, was driving the truck that killed Stephen Smith. Now, I'm not saying that. That's what these people are saying. But what was Paul? There was a
Right.
hearing that was coming up. And even if Paul wasn't going to, what if they thought maybe? What if he uses that information to try to get out of this? What if he uses the death of Stephen Smith to try to leverage his little ass to get out of the death of Mallory Beach?
Sure.
Who would want to make
anything to get out of trouble?
Who would want to make sure that Paul was held accountable to the death of Mallory Beach, besides Mallory's parents? In this picture right here.
Anthony.
Who would want to make sure that Paul shut his mouth and didn't utter the word Stephen Smith? Because when I said before in this interview, if Patrick and Sean don't talk, nobody knows. But I did talk to a private investigator who told me, it was hired by Sandy Smith's attorneys, did tell me that he did interview people that said that Sean said the same thing. He would go to these parties and he would spout off that he hit Stephen Smith. So people knew it, right? But no one talks down there. Nobody talks down in the Low Country. Nobody talks in the Low Country. But when they're with their friends and when they drink. But if one of them, like Paul, is trying to save his ass, right? Remember the old mob movies? Hey, you think talk? I mean, he just got clipped by the cops. I don't know. Joey's a good guy. We know Joey a long time, but is he going to talk? I don't know if Joey's going to talk. Let's make sure Joey doesn't talk.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a classic mob movie.
Yeah,
how to figure the way out is you go clip Joey, and then Joey's. You don't have to worry about Joey talking anymore. Listen,
he's
so I'm not saying
talking.
I'm not saying that these guys had anything to do with it, but they certainly had motive. They certainly had motive, and there's evidence that I have shared with SLED. By the way, all this has been shared with SLED going back to July of last year, and I just was sharing more information with them that I uncovered about Stephen Smith that relates back to the Murdaughs that I just shared with them 2 weeks ago. So hopefully they're doing something with it. But this case gets more interesting every single day, and everybody keeps going back to Alex did it. Alex did it. I'm going to tell you again, and feel free to come after me and with your hate. Alex Murdaugh did not kill his wife and his son.
Yeah,
the evidence is not there. In fact, I'm going to be
if you guys have not gone over to his page, there's a lot of videos to catch up on too, for people to watch, where you have been able to disprove a lot of what we're seeing in these documentaries, and timelines are not matching up. And you were the person who has actually gone down to Moselle and tried, done the drives, measured. You have been boots on the ground and have proven timelines are not matching up to what we're seeing to connect Alex to the murders.
Right. In fact, I'm going to be in Beaufort in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to do another one. We're going to do a reenactment we're going to measure out exactly where the kennels are, to where the hangar is, to where Maggie was found, to where Paul was found. And we're going to try to replicate what the state says Alec Murdaugh did. We're going to try to replicate that, and we're going to time it. We're going to time it in a couple of different ways. We're going to film it, and then we're going to time it with two killers coming out of the woods and see what happens there. By the way, the shooter of Maggie, according to the defense, was anywhere between 5'2" and 5'4".
Yeah, like a teenager.
I don't know if 5'4" rings a bell from this interview, but
right.
Somebody else I mentioned was 5'4".
Alex is definitely not 5'4".
No, he's 6'4", but he's 6'4" from the waist. He's got a tall torso, waist up, because him and I have the same inseam pants. I'm 6'1", so we have a 32 pants, but he was like a 44 waist, but he's really tall from his waist up. No, Alex Murdaugh did not do this. This was appears to be based off of the evidence. Not only a revenge killing, but a keep quiet killing.
Mhm.
And I even have evidence of people knowing about this, that laughing that Alec got caught.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
And they're like, they thought it was so funny because they said they all hated Alec. So there's people out there that know who really did it. I know who did it. I certainly am not going to come out here and spout it off. But what I can tell you is that I've given this information to SLED. They have all the information that I've talked about and even more. And I've also given it to Dick and Jim, his defense attorneys. Met with them for quite a few hours one time, and still share information with them. So everybody's aware. And then we've got the Alec Murdaugh on February 11th is going to be before the Supreme Court of the state of South Carolina, where they're going to argue for a new trial. And I believe he's going to get a new trial. We won't know on February 11th because that's not how the Supreme Court works here in the state. They'll take they have their written arguments, and they'll listen to their oral arguments, and then they'll come up with an opinion. It could be days, weeks, months, who knows. I'm assuming it's probably going to be a short amount of time. But yep, and I will be there as well, listening to that. And I think he's going to get a new trial.
If he does get a new trial, though, with a lot of the charges of
the financial charges.
Yes. Do we, he's not getting out of prison, right?
No. So here's what he did.
The only thing is he just wants to clear his name in his wife and son's murder is really what he's trying to do, correct?
Yes, and I think there's a secondary to that. So in most states, I know in the state of South Carolina, in most states, if you I always think this is weird how the state and the federal charge you with the same crimes. And doesn't make any sense to me, but our United States Supreme Court says it does, but it doesn't to me. But anyway, so he pled guilty to those financial charges in federal court before he pled guilty to state charges of the financial charges. So here's what happens. Let's say the Supreme Court throws out his case, and let's go to the worst case. Let's say the best case scenario for him is they overturn the conviction and don't allow it to be tried again. I don't think that's going to happen, but let's just say it does. Yeah. Or let's just say they overturn the conviction and the state doesn't want to either retry him, or let's say they retry him and they lose. Here's what happens. Because Alec pled guilty to the federal charges before the state charges, and those state charges and federal charges run concurrently, meaning they both run at the same time, he will then leave South Carolina state prison and go to federal prison. Now, with the murder charges being dropped, or let's say he wins his second trial, he's not going there as a murderer and financial fraud guy. He's just going financial crime. So he's going to go to one of these club feds where you can order, DoorDash Chick-fil-A to.
Which makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, he's trying to live the best life he can behind bars, and exactly what you said. If we're taking a murder charge out, there's less of a target on your back. Your condition will be nicer, right?
Yeah. You go to Club Fed, and that's what would happen. Now, yes, he would be there. I did the math. I think you earn, let's call it good behavior. I forget what the feds call it in their system, but you earn, I think it's like 50 some days a year of off your time. There's no parole or any of this thing in the federal system, but you can earn days off. And over that many years, he would probably get out of prison somewhere in his late 80s. He's 57 now.
Wow. If he
So
does, yeah, that's kind of
if
crazy.
he lives that long, he would get out. And he has a $5 million trust that his dad left him that the state has not been able to touch because it's in a trust. It's not in his name. It's in a trust name.
Right.
I don't know how he would access that once he got out in 30 some years, but I did the math on that. It would be worth about 25-30 million by the time he gets out.
That Murdaugh name is never going broke. We know that.
No, and in fact, Buster, who just got married, he's suing Netflix and HBO and Cinemark and a couple others. Cinemark is the production company that did the documentary Southern Scandal, Murdaugh Murders for Netflix, and he's suing them. And by the way, if you watch the Netflix show, I did a YouTube video on this. You can look a couple of messages down, or a couple of videos down in mine. Cinemark got all their information from Fitz News. And I know this because I have, through an investigation, had discovered text messages that a person who used to work for Fitz News, Callie Lyons, had. And there's thousands of them, but it shows and proves that Cinemark got their information on Stephen Smith and Alec Murdaugh from Fitz News. And where did Fitz News get their information from? Well, Liz Farrell was working for Fitz News at the time, and Liz Farrell was getting her information, according to her deposition, from Mark Tinsley. Mm-hmm. All from Mark Tinsley. And what did Mark Tinsley have as a incentive to see Alec Murdaugh guilty? Well, he just got almost a $20 million judgment against Parker's convenience store for selling Paul Murdaugh the booze, the beer, on that particular night that Mallory was killed. So he had millions of dollars at risk. And if Alec got off free, not guilty, that wouldn't have been good either. So if you watch the Netflix, you're basically listening to what an attorney who wanted Alec guilty gave as evidence to Fitz News and Liz Farrell. And they admitted in those text messages. I'm not just making something up.
Right.
So that's why you're not going to have media go out and tell you that Alex didn't do it, because they're all going to look dumb, number one. And number two, no one's doing this type of journalistic work out here of doing these experiments.
We'll definitely see them taking it a little more serious after this scheduled hearing. Like if he does get a new trial, I think the media is going to be more open to looking at other possibilities. And it's kind of like you're way ahead of the game on this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
And the Hulu show that Mandy Matney had, I mean, that was complete fiction. But here's the weird thing about this, and I'm going to pick on Mandy a little bit because they're picking on me, is that I dropped this article about Stephen Smith on October 15th. This is when I think her Hulu show debuted. Yes. And the episode where Stephen Smith had died had not aired yet. So I had called Sandy Smith before I dropped this article, and I told her about it. I called her Eric Bland, told him about it. Sandy told me, listen, I've never heard this much information from a SLED agent. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I told her about Sean Patrick. I told her about everything. Should I tell your attorney? Yeah, I told the attorney. I called Eric up. He thanked me. I got a text from Eric Bland. Thank you for your hard work. Good job. And then that was on October 15th. And then 2 days later, when Mandy Matney found out she was out in California doing her Hulu thing, all of a sudden I'm a cruel liar. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute. You don't know what I have.
Right.
You don't know the interview that I have. You don't know the person that I interviewed. How am I a cruel liar? Well, they're the same people that we said in the beginning of this was any information, please, any information. I come and solve this thing, and it's like, that guy's lying.
Right. Well, it's that competition, and also it's one thing I noticed too is, like, a former journalist, it is a tough pill to swallow when you're hired by a company. Like I've worked for NBC, ABC, Fox, all of them. And it's like to have that name behind you makes you feel good. But the reality is anyone can go out and investigate. There's no special media badge or press pass. Everyone jokes like, well, I don't have a media badge. I'm like, that's not a real thing. And I could see where there's jealousy in the fact you went out there and you're doing this. When she kind of dealt with corporate America that's like, we don't want to follow this story. We don't want to go down this road, and kind of hammering like to stay away from it. When you have been able to freely cover what you want as an independent journalist, independent investigator, and like you said, solving the case, there's got to be some jealousy there.
I mean, maybe I try to work with all the journalists I can, people like yourself, and so that cruel liar statement really inspired me to you know what, I need to write a book about this. I've written 3 books. First one was defending Alec Murdaugh, not guilty by reasonable doubt. The second one was a Murdaugh juror who got wrongly removed. Juror 785, the egg lady. I wrote that book. And then I wrote a book for a January 6th, a J6 guy, called Trumped Up. He was pardoned by President Trump. And the fourth one is Heartbreak on Sandy Run Road.
Okay. So
the
I want to
investigation.
talk about this. Yeah. So like before, we're coming up on an hour and a half. I'm like, God, we could just talk for hours about this.
Yeah,
and that's the craziest thing. But to wrap up,
sure.
So we just talked about Alex is in February going to have, this hearing, whether we're going to find out whether he's getting a new trial. So that's kind of where we are on that. Right. And moving back to Stephen Smith, where are we now in the, not, like in the investigation that you're doing, but in the eyes of America and in the law, where are they with the investigation on Stephen Smith? Where do we stand?
Yeah, that's always a tough one. I know I was working with some people over at Law and Crime, and they were helping me do a little bit of investigating on this thing. And SLED is investigating this. And just as I said, 2 weeks ago, I even uploaded more information to their, they have a website that you can upload information to. It's called the Axiom website. So I'm still working with SLED, and if I'm such a cruel liar, Mandy, why is SLED still wanting information from me? So they have all this information. Law runs at their own speed. I'm not saying they're not doing their job. I mean, he's not checking in with me and telling me what he's doing. But I know that they're working on this case, and I'm sure that they want everything to be right, and that when they do make an arrest, that they can make a conviction. But what's confusing everything even more, I will tell you, is that all this information that I said leads back to Alec Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh and Maggie Murdaugh is also in the hands of SLED. Now, they think they got their guy, but they don't have their guy. And they made a mistake too. And it's okay that they made a mistake. But you've got a situation here in South Carolina where the Attorney General of the state of South Carolina, who sat at that Alec Murdaugh trial at that desk every single day, is now running for governor. And I don't think he's going to want any egg on his face. So,
well, the problem is too, you openly say it's okay to make a mistake, but in their eyes, it's not. It is absolutely embarrassing and humiliating for you to honestly be like more on top of this than they are. I hope that they take the information that you've gathered and use it, instead of being embarrassed that they didn't solve this. But it's like, we get it. You all have other cases you're working on too. Also, it's this, I go back to the small town thing and being quiet, and people have things to lose and there's connections. And sometimes you need an outsider who doesn't have those deep connections to like take a second look at things and be like, okay, this is what makes sense. These are the timelines that line up. And everything you've uncovered is making sense. I wonder, where does his mom stand? Have you two been in communication?
Stephen's mom? Absolutely. But that all ended after Manny got involved. Yeah. I can't say for a fact, but in my opinion, I believe that she has some sort of signed agreement contract with them.
Okay.
Yeah,
which
so
would make sense, because let's be honest, sometimes having the media behind you, and this is one thing I want to clarify to people. Typically, the media does not pay for interviews. I feel like that's a misconception people have. Shows like Dr. Phil and things like that, they do have a budget to pay for interviews, but I could see where Mandy has made some type of legal agreement with his mother to kind of be the person that you reach out to. You know, there's always, like, when you cover a story and you connect to someone, there's like this first journalist you'll always reach out to. And it sounds to me like the two of them maybe have connected, even just being two women. I don't know. But I feel like it's a shame that your connection has been lost. Do you feel there's any way, like, has she just kind of gone unresponsive, or what has happened?
Yeah, the last time, well, after the whole Mandy, you're a liar thing, which was completely idiotic on her part, I reached back out and I said, listen, I'll tell you what, I'll let you listen to this interview. I'll come to you. I'll come to your attorney's office. I don't have to report on this. It's between us three. I just want you to hear what this person is saying happened to your son. You want to know. I've got it. Here it is. And her last, I can tell you exactly what it says. Her last text to me was something along the lines of, let me see. It was Sandy Smith. Her last message was, I'll have to see when my next day off is. I'm a caregiver for a 90-year-old man and his 5 children live in New York. That was October 19th.
Wow. So the last communication is October 19th.
Remember, I was the king of the world October 15th, October 16th, October 17th. Manny calls me a liar. October 19th, I get that. But you know, Manny's raised a lot of money, and you know, I'm not here for clicks. I'm not here for whatever. But now I'm here to put out the story because I'm tired of listening to this BS about Buster Murdaugh. It's not there. Yeah. There's no evidence. There's no proof. All the proof goes back to 2 other individuals. All the evidence goes back to 2 other individuals that just happened to be on that road. It's in the wrong place. I mean, think about this. If Stephen Smith had taken a half a second, none of us would be talking about this. He'd be turning 30 years old and going, man, I almost got my ass killed back in when I was, 20 or 19. Remember that? I told you about that truck almost hit me.
Right.
Half a second. That's all. That's how fragile life is. But it did.
Well, I
hope gone, and now there's a book about him.
I hope the 2 of you can kind of reconnect, and I can tell, like, genuinely, you want justice for this case. This isn't about clicks, like you said. Like, I can tell you guys straight up, it has nothing to do with clicks for you, because I was the one who reached out to you, and I was like, dude, why is your YouTube change? Like, why don't you have subscribers? You were kind of like, I don't know, I don't care. And that to me, I knew like this is a passion for you. You want justice, you want the truth out there. And like many people are commenting in our comment section, like, thank you for continuing on this case. I really hope his mother doesn't get wrapped up in some sort of cover up, you know, or anything to kind of make an agenda, because what you've laid out, and if you guys don't follow him over on TikTok, it all I'm going to pin this, it all lines up. And sometimes there are victims of families who will just kind of keep quiet for money. And why I say that is if the state wants to make it look like Buster did this, or wants to make him look like the person, they can set it up to look like that and then do something to keep Stephen Smith's family quiet and happy. And that happens with victims' families sometimes. But regardless, like, this case needs justice, and I can tell truly you have a passion for it. And it's not about clicks. It's not about, you know, writing this book to make money. I mean, I can just clearly tell that about you. You have so much information and you have done so much research that it would be dumb for you not to do these books. And I also admire that you go out and you do it, when other people will sometimes be quiet and be like, well, I don't have the press pass, or I don't work for a big news station, so no one's going to listen to me. When you're like, I don't care, like, I'm going to do it anyway. You either listen or you don't. And that's what like I love about your channel. I can't tell you how many times I've used the phrase, it's a good thing that the truth does not need your approval to be the truth. Right. Believe what you want to, but here's the truth. And so, yeah, I mean, the first book, Defending Alec Murdaugh, Not Guilty by Reasonable Doubt, was I just, the guy's not guilty. And I wanted to get the information and the experiments and things that I did out there. The second book with Myra Crosby getting wrongly kicked off that jury, I wanted to tell her story. And she worked with me on that. We're co-authors on that. I wanted to get her story out there because I feel that she was also put down. And then whatever you think about J6, this particular guy, Josh Pruitt, you know, he just walked in. He didn't do anything. And gets 5 years. I mean, should he have walked in? Whatever. I'm not going to argue that. But so that story too, it was just a good American story. And this one here is the same thing. Like, there's too many people in the media and the press that are going in a completely opposite, different direction. And wanting to go because it's Murdaugh. Listen, it has nothing to do with this. Is just small town country hog hunting out in the middle of the highway and just getting clipped. And that's boring. Same thing with Becky Hill. It's boring. It's boring. I feel like you said the exact word. I think it is so easy to simplify what really happened, but it makes it so much juicier to add Buster's name into it, doesn't it? Absolutely, it does. And you just sprinkle Murdaugh all over it, and all of a sudden people are like, what? Yeah, like, you got to think, like, you know what? Maybe it's as simple as two kids who were drunk driving out hunting, and they hit the kid in the head, and he thought he was. They were pulling Buster over. Murdaugh hating this, you know, this kid because he's gay, and they had, like, my gosh, do I see how? And when we talk about clicks and sensationalizing, that is how our society totally is. And unfortunately, what you've uncovered is just, sometimes we have to, like, dumb it down and simplify it and be like, hey, it's not as juicy as you think it is, but it's the truth. Look for the simplest. Don't make this complicated. And I hear so many different complicated theories of Murdaugh, and you just it's gotta be simple. But this book is coming out. The book is done. It's ready to go. There's a couple of publishers that are looking at it. I'm in no hurry to get it out there. I think it's going to be more towards summer. I don't quite know yet. April, May time period, maybe.
But we're just starting the process of just getting the word out that Heartbreak on Sandy Run Road, which is, by the way, I do have a song on Spotify dedicated directly to Stephen Smith called Heartbreak on Sandy Run Road, if you go check that out. Yeah, so it all kind of goes together. And I wrote this book, I will tell you, then we can just finish up. But, as a reporter, especially in the written side in journalism, you'll anchor something with a link that'll be an internal link to take you to another story if you want. And I was thinking, how can I do this in a book? Well, you really can't do it in a book because it's pages, right? It's paper. So there's probably about 15 to 20 of them. What I did is I created QR codes to put into the book. So it's an interactive book. So when I talk about the conversation that Sandy and I had together, click here.
Scan it.
You can scan it and listen to it, and it'll take you right to you can listen to the 15-minute conversation that we had.
I don't even know how I've never seen that in a book. Dude, you are like blowing my mind.
I've never seen a book either.
That's great.
I'll tell you how it came to me is because in the beginning of the book, I thought, I need to put this song out here, right? How can people listen to this song? And I'm thinking, how in the hell can I'm like, a QR code. I'll just put a QR code here. Click on this, but I even tell people, like, take your camera phone, put it up to it, and click on it, hit go, and you'll listen to the song, Heartbreak on Sandy Run Road. Again, not that I'm like Post Malone here trying to get a #1 hit. It's a nice song about Stephen Smith. And it's
I like it. You're not letting his name be forgotten. And I feel with having the Murdaugh name, Stephen does get forgotten. And we're dealing with a case that still needs justice and a mother who's hurting and friends who are still hurting.
Yeah. And I talk about the boat crash, and I talk about the Murdaughs in this, but it's all trying to connect all this together that leads back to Stephen Smith, that this happened. And by the way, once Paul Murdaugh has passed, no one down there has weirdly died.
Yeah, it's been very quiet lately, hasn't it?
It's been quiet in the Low Country, hasn't it?
Right.
Thank you for
when you're out there shaking things up. So you guys go follow him on TikTok, and then also let's subscribe. I'm trying to get his views up here on YouTube. I was like absolutely shocked because I'm like, I don't know. I just can't make it over on TikTok. I'm not cool. You obviously are cool. But I was like, we need to do more of these lives and have conversations. And I know you're open-minded, just like I am. And we take questions from people, in the chat and be interactive. And I love doing that.
And by the way, I'm glad you're touching back into true crime.
I know. Yeah, I'll touch on that. So, say your website again, just so everybody has it.
Sure. Everything's going back to Crime and Cask. So it's Crime, A-N-D, Crime and Cask, C-A-S-K. It's my TikTok, it's my YouTube, it's my Instagram, it's my Facebook. You can look me up pretty much anywhere. crimeandcask.com. Look for this book, Heartbreak on Sandy Run Road, coming out in the next couple of months. I'll be promoting it, and hopefully come back on here again right when we are doing that, and talk about the other case, your Chris Watts case.
Yeah, we do need to do that. Right. You need to kind of like do your digging, and then we'll get your opinion. But let's definitely plan definitely February after Alex does his hearing. Why don't we touch base and plan another live stream for sure?
Sure, because I'll be there. It's going to be interesting. The way it goes is, I'll leave you with this, is that I think the prosecution goes first for 30 minutes. It's timed. Then the defense goes for 30 minutes. It's timed, and they give their oral argument. And then the prosecution has 15 minutes to follow up, and that's it. It's not. There's no witnesses. There's nothing. We're not rehashing the case. It's just why should he get a new trial? Why should he not get a new trial? And then they decide, and we'll see. But yeah, be happy to come back on.
Perfect.
Look for me on TikTok and everywhere else for that around February 11th.
Yep. And then I will pin you. Thank you so much again for joining me. Yeah. So you guys, I want to say thank you. Check out this book when it comes out. I'll let you know. And like I said, he's not in a rush to release this. This is not like a money grab. He's waiting for the right time. I want to end with this GoFundMe page for Sandy Smith, Stephen Smith's mother. I'm not involved with whatever is going on with kind of any type of drama with the journalists and all that. All I know is there is a mother who is grieving, and friends who are grieving. And when he just said to me that she's working as a nurse with patients, I'm like, I don't know how she gets up every day and is able to work and is not sad and depressed when she doesn't have closure in what happened to her son. So I want to share this GoFundMe page. Like, I don't care even like how much it looks like they haven't met their goal. I don't even care. Like, I feel like when someone loses a child, they shouldn't have to be working. They should be focusing on their mental health and healing. And I hate this. Like, they have to even explain where the money is going. Like, who cares where the money is going? It can go wherever she wants it to go. If it's going to go to her, like taking a vacation in the Bahamas, I don't care. Whatever she needs to do to heal. So I'm going to drop, once again, this GoFundMe page. Let's support Sandy Smith, just in general in her life, getting through her day to day. And it's unbelievable. You guys go kind of watch Crime and Cask's videos, and you're going to see just really how simple I feel like this case is. And I hope that Stephen Smith's mother and Jim can kind of reconnect again and talk, because it's so important to give this case some closure and some justice. So that's his page. If you want to go subscribe and follow and catch up on everything. But I did want to close on something positive and show this GoFundMe page for Sandy Smith. And what he was saying is he's glad I'm back at it. Honestly, guys, about 3 weeks ago, my father passed away, and I have been having a really hard time dealing with that. And getting myself motivated to get back on YouTube, on TikTok, or whatever it may be. I've been really struggling. So the fact that this popped up and we had the opportunity to do this interview and talk about Stephen Smith again, I feel like was the universe telling me, keep doing it, keep going. I do want to continue covering lifestyle content, but I've also decided when it comes to the true crime, let's talk more about these cases that are unsolved and cases that need justice. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And if you're new, please subscribe, take a look at some of my videos, and I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you have a fabulous weekend.